Hello, and welcome to the Bold Leadership Story Show, where we talk about the experiences shaping exceptional lives. And today, I'm very honored to have Sharla Frost join me on the show. Sharla is from Frogville, Oklahoma, and she's got a very illustrious career as an attorney, lawyer, has owned her own law firm for 25 years, has recently retired from that. She's written several children's books. She owns a cattle ranch. And well, I'm getting ahead of my story here. Let me go back to it's just amazing history. Sharla J. Frost. I'm going to read a bit of her bio. Was born in Paris, Texas, which is right across the river from Red River, correct?
It is right across Red River from Frogville. Yeah.
From Frogville, right. And you grew up in Frogville, Oklahoma. And Frogville currently, you said, has about, 200 people living there?
200 people in a 5-mile radius. So
Yeah.
it is a
So
small ranching community.
it's a ranching community in Oklahoma. You're a fourth generation Frogvillian on one side of the family and a fifth on the other. I mean, and so you grew up and you've got this history of being from an honest to goodness ranching community in the heart of Oklahoma, which is like the heart of the United States, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. My people have been here for a very, very long time.
How was that growing up in that environment for you?
Well, we were 13 miles from a loaf of bread, is what I tell people. I mean, we're really way out in the country,
Okay.
and in a lot of ways, it was very idyllic because we had relatives who lived around us. My grandparents were a half mile down the road. My aunt and uncle were a quarter of a mile down the road, and so we always had family around, and it was a safe environment. You could be outside. Some of that's timing because it was a long time ago, but
Right.
it was a nice way to grow up.
Very nice. Well, I imagine so. And then you transitioned. Let's see. It says here you have storytelling genes.
I
Come from a
do.
long line of storytellers, and I love stories.
Yes, well, on one side of my family, my great grandfather's nickname was Windy Stevenson because he was such a storyteller. He was windy. And on the other side of the family, my great uncle said his daddy told what he called continued lies. He had to go to sleep at night and think up the ending so he could get to the ending. So I think of that as sort of like the Arabian Nights, where the stories always continued. But yes, it was a natural thing to do growing up.
That's really cool. So, how did you evolve? How did you get involved with those stories? Because looks like you use those stories to your advantage in that skill.
I did. When I was actively practicing law, I was a trial lawyer. So what you do as a courtroom lawyer, it's not so much about arguing. A friend of mine told me once, he said, "I didn't remember you arguing all the time." And I said, "It's not what you do. What you do is you tell a story. And the ability to tell a story and explain your client's position is what you do." So coming from that sort of a background really made that a natural thing for me.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. So, and then your professional achievements include being recognized by Chambers Partners for trial skills, recognized by Best Lawyers in 2018 as the 2018 Houston Lawyer of the Year in the Products Liability Litigation Defendants category. All right.
That one, yeah, and that one was special to me because you get voted on by the other lawyers. So the
Oh,
people that you practice against, the people that are on your
so that
side,
one.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So that one was really special. That was a vote from my peers on both sides of the table.
Okay. And then you've been recognized as a Texas super lawyer every year from 2005 to 2020.
Yeah.
What is a super lawyer? Do you have a cape and a You fly through the air?
Not exactly, but the top 5% of lawyers in the state. And again, it's voted on by your peers. So
Okay.
other lawyers, judges, clients, people chime in to decide who makes the super lawyer list. And
Okay.
2020 was when I retired. So I stopped playing.
You gave up the mantle.
I did. No cape anymore.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've done an awesome job. Then let's see, you've served as the president of Litigation Counsel of America.
Yeah,
And
that was terrific. That's all trial lawyers. And it for people who understand litigation, there's a defense side, of course, and the plaintiff side. Most legal organizations are one side or another.
mhm,
Litigation Counsel of America is both. And trial lawyers are kind of trial lawyers. You can walk into a room of trial lawyers and you know immediately that that's where you are. And it doesn't matter what side they're on. It's just a different energy. So that was a lot of fun. I greatly enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite organizations. They did a terrific job.
excellent. So indulge me here. When you say it was a different energy, what does that mean?
Well, the law is separated into lots of different practice areas, just like medicine is.
Mhm,
So you wouldn't go to a heart doctor if you had an eye problem and vice versa. But trial lawyers do the trial part. Transactional lawyers do your paperwork. The people who do probate and estates, there's just a different feeling for the people who do different kinds of practice. And you can feel it. Trial lawyers, by and large, are extroverted because you got to be. They're
mhm,
verbal because you have to talk to people,
mhm,
and they're curious. They want to know about you just as much as you want to know about them. So you never know when you might need that person to be your co-counsel or your referring lawyer, or you might be against them in a court. And you want to have an understanding of what their personality is. So it's like a bunch of trial lawyers is like going into a children's playroom. It's loud, there's a lot of noise, people are talking. It's just the energy is different and you can feel it.
I see. Okay. All right. I get that. I went into a classroom this morning, and it was a class on tax law.
Uh, yeah, didn't do any of that.
Well, and I'm a sales marketing guy, so I'm like, I'm used to talking to everybody, and I go in there and they're all sitting down very quiet. It was nothing going on. They were all looking at their phones, down at their phones. And I just go, yep, I'm at the tax law place.
Yeah.
So that was funny. Uh, okay, so you've also been active in the National Association of Women Lawyers,
Yes.
including repeat service at the Supreme Court for nominee evaluation committee.
Yeah, that was actually a lot of fun. I wasn't on the committee for the last maybe the last couple of nominees, but the National Association of Women Lawyers is actually one of the oldest affinity groups in the United States. And in fact, there were women lawyers and a women's lawyers organization really before they could even join the Bar Association. So, great group. And one of the things that the National Association of Women Lawyers does is they have a committee that when a president nominates a new Supreme Court justice candidate,
Mhm,
the committee goes in and evaluates them for some very specific things. So we look at where those candidates stand on issues of special significance to women. So equality of pay, reproductive rights, sort of the usual list.
mhm.
And the committee is composed of academics, and they go in and they read everything that that candidate has ever written and analyze it. I wasn't on that part of the committee. And then there's a portion of the committee that talks to people who have appeared in front of the judge to find out what their judicial temperament is like. Because some people make great judges, Some people are really kind of mean and really aren't what you want for a judge, but
Mm.
you find that out by talking to the people who've been in front of them. They also interview former law clerks to see what they were like to work with, and then the committee comes together to reach consensus on whether they are recommended as a candidate or not, and they can be qualified but not recommended because there's some really, really smart people that you don't necessarily want in that role, or they can be both qualified and recommended. But it was a fascinating peek behind the curtain, and I really enjoyed the process. It was a great
Mhm.
committee to serve on. A lot of work, but well worth the time.
Well, and really important. I mean,
Yeah.
those individuals are so important in our system
Yeah,
to
and they have a lifetime appointment, so you wanna make sure
yeah.
you get it right.
Yes. My uncle was a judge, here in Riverside, and so I I got a chance to sit with him and chat over lunches for a while, and it was fascinating. Um,
Yeah,
the Now, something that I'd like to explore here is that it says you getting through law school was just the first hurdle to professional success. So that
right.
sets the stage, and then you say practicing law while female presented many challenges. And when I read that the first time, I was like, "Well, is that like a DUI?
Sort
Practicing
of,
law is that a legal term? Practicing law while female?"
yeah. Um, yeah, the law profession is a fascinating profession, and it has tremendous opportunity, for everyone. But it's still, in many ways, a male-dominated profession. It is better now than it was almost 40 years ago when I was in law school, but getting through law school, which is a real challenge, I didn't appreciate how hard law school was gonna be. I was a
Mm,
good student, I had always studied hard, I'd always made good grades, and I get to law school and you're competing against each other. So you're not just getting graded, you're getting graded on the curve, but you're head to head with everybody. And everyone who's there has done well. They've always done well, they've always made good grades. So suddenly, you're not the smartest kid in the room, you're just one of the smart kids in the room, and everyone's scrambling to get to the top because class rank still matters.
mhm,
The kid who graduates first in the class, you don't get participation medals in law school. You
mm,
either make the first cut or you don't. And the people who make the best grades and the best outcomes get offers from the best law firms. So you want to do as well as you can do. And I did well. I was fortunate. I had great teachers and I had tremendous classmates, and I still managed to do well. And so I went to what they call a blue stocking law firm. I went to what was then Fulbright and Jaworski in Houston, and it was a terrific experience. But what you don't appreciate as a student is that, at least at that point, there were still some limitations on what women were likely to do. There, even the statistics have been about the same for a long time. And a National Association of Women Lawyers does a research paper about every 5 years, and the statistics have stayed about the same. Since
mhm,
1970s, half of the women, or half of the students in law school and half the graduates, are women. So you'd think must be about 50-50, right? Well,
yeah,
that's true when you start in the legal profession. But by the time partnership comes around, there are only about 20% of partners are women, and only 5% in management are women. And that's irrespective of color or uh, location or any of those sorts of things. Those are just the raw statistics.
mhm,
So, what I didn't appreciate as a law school graduate, because we really got treated equally in law school, I never
mhm,
felt like there was any difference. And I frankly didn't get treated a lot different in practice until the very end of my career, which is a whole different story for a different time. But it's just difficult. Women aren't socialized in many ways to be as assertive and not combative, but competitive as men
Mm.
are.
Okay.
It's changing a little bit. I think sports teams and this and that have made that a little bit different.
Hmm.
But the competition issues were something that you have to get adjusted to. And one of the reasons that I wrote the book I wrote, Power at the Table, was to talk about how to develop business. And you'll appreciate this as a marketing guy. As a lawyer, you're most places you're expected to have your own clients, but
Hmm.
nobody trains you on how to do that. So they expect you to do it, and unless you're related to somebody or you kind of luck into it, it's difficult to learn those skills of how to develop business of your own. And law firms by and large are operated as pyramid schemes. uh, you're at the top, you provide the work, people downstream from you do the work, and the profits then, rise up towards the top. So
Hmm.
you need to have that kind of network. And I did not understand that I was going to need to do that. But I was good at it. I learned the skill, and I had some very good mentors who helped me with that. But learning how to develop business and get business and do the business side of the law, I found to be more challenging for most females. So practicing law while female can be a little bit challenging.
Well, and yeah, and then you took the bull by the horns and started your own company.
I did. I had my own firm for a long time. I was partners with a great lawyer named Jim Powers. Jim was my boss at my third law firm. I also
Hmm.
thought, silly me, that I was going to go somewhere and stay for my entire career, not realizing that I was preceding the Generation Xers. I stayed at Fulbright for a short period of time, went to a Fulbright spinoff, and then went to a spinoff of the spinoff. But while I was at the spinoff of the spinoff, the lawyer that I was hired to work with came to me one afternoon and said, "Hey, why don't we go have a beer?" I was like, "It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We don't go drinking at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but okay, you're the boss." So we went to our usual little watering hole, and we sat down. And I was expecting him to tell me that he was having a life crisis or something, because he was my boss. This was not
Hmm.
an inappropriate sort of relationship. But
Yeah.
while my mind is thinking of all these things he could tell me, he leaned forward and said, "I'm going to leave the firm. If you'll come with me, I'll make you a partner. You can be a 50-50 partner." And I sat there for about 30 seconds and thought, okay. Um, and he had clients.
All right.
I didn't have any clients at the time, but he had clients, and I had credit. So that's where we started. And from that, we rode a lot of waves. Life was good. Like any business, life was good, life was bad, life was in between. At
Hmm.
one point, we had 50 lawyers and almost 100 staff people. And then at the end, we had 8 lawyers and probably 15 staff people, because the market changed and the practice changed. But
Mm.
learning to do the business side was something that I didn't have a background in. I was an English and speech major. I could tell you about green imagery in The Knight's Tale, but I couldn't read a spreadsheet. So I had to learn that on
Mm.
the job. And in retrospect, if I had to do all over again, I'd have taken a few business classes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could probably teach those now.
These days I probably could. Then I
Yeah.
could not.
Well, and what's fascinating to me too is that fourth, fifth generation Frogville, 200 plus population, um, small town, and yet you succeeded in being a tremendous leader in at the Fortune 50 level in corporate law. That's insane.
Yeah. My
It,
parents always told me I could do anything I wanted to do if I'd just work hard at it. So I did.
okay. So what is that? Tell me what that meant to you. Work hard at it.
Well, no
Because
one in
you
my
had to have started early in
Oh,
your.
yeah. My first job was between my 7th and 8th grade year when I worked all summer at the local abstract office, uh, organizing and filing land records. I've had a job since I was 12 years old, but
Okay.
I came from a working class family. I
Hmm.
expected that I was going to have a job all of my life. And if you have a job, the way that you're successful in that job is you work hard and you stay focused, you're prudent with your money. They were very insistent that I learn to be careful about the money. Uh,
Hmm.
Friends of mine in law school made fun of me because I put things on layaway, but I didn't have any money. So if I needed it, I could pay it out and go get it later. Uh, but I was raised to think that you paid for what you got. And if you couldn't afford it, you didn't buy it. So I was careful with the money. And I thought that I would have to work for myself. And that's what I did.
Okay. So that set the stage for you to excel. And when did you when did you learn that you were, you had books inside of you to
I think
write?
I had probably known that since college. I was the editor of the school newspaper, and I
Okay.
spoke this morning to some junior high kids who wanted to know what my plan B had been because I
Hmm.
told them they needed a plan B because a couple of them were probably a little unrealistic about what they want to do.
Uh-huh.
But my favorite job was I was editor of the school newspaper, and I wrote. I had a column every week, I had articles to write. And had it been financially feasible for me, that's probably what I would have done. But I took a tremendous number of writing classes in college. And in
Hmm.
fact, do you know who Tracy Letts is, the famous actor and playwright?
I apologize, I do not. Now I do.
August Osage County, if you're familiar with that one. Anyway, his father was my creative writing professor in
Okay.
college, and I took, I think, 3 different classes from Dennis.
Mm.
And so I'd always harbored the thought that there would come a time that I would write a book. But I was traveling 300 nights a year as a trial lawyer. You don't have
Wow.
time to do a whole lot of anything. You can't
Wow.
get your laundry cleaned. You certainly can't write a book doing that. So
Yeah.
when the time came that I decided, I'm really done with this, I don't have to do this anymore. I thought, well, what'll I do next? I'm not really geared to sit and do nothing.
Mhm.
So I retired in 2020. I gave up trials, left the law firm. I was at a national law firm at the time, and it was just time. I was just ready to do something different. And
Okay.
I watched television for about 2 weeks, and then I thought, I am bored out of my ever loving mind. So it was time.
Did you
So
do whole weeks?
decided to do it. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, and then you've got a speaking career as well.
I do. I've always done a lot of presentations and speaking. I was also a debater in college, which is how I ended up getting a scholarship to law school. I probably couldn't have afforded to go to law school without a scholarship, so
Mhm.
that worked out well. Uh, but I've done speaking for a very long time, and it goes back to that family storytelling gene. I like nothing better than a captive audience. For these people who say that they get nervous when they speak in public, that doesn't compute for me. Uh,
Mm.
I enjoy the process and I enjoy the opportunity to talk with folks.
What's your earliest memories of storytelling in front of a group?
Oh, that's easy. I was in 4-H in the 5th grade, and
Okay.
I got to go to the county competition and do a presentation on how to set a table. So that's the first one I can remember where I did public speaking. That's been a long time ago.
That's cool. That's a great way to set someone up for success is to, talk about something. My first one was, I cooked an omelet in front of the class, and I took I took my little Bunsen burner. I was doing a lot of backpacking, so I had all the stuff to make anything out in the wilderness. And I brought my omelet pan and everything in the eggs, and I cracked the eggs with one hand. And
Wow.
everybody was like, "Whoa!" So it's like, "Oh, maybe that's a skill."
Right.
So
Yeah.
that was fun. So, what's your favorite thing to speak about?
I like to talk about both business development and what I call business resiliency.
Mm,
When I talked earlier about sort of the ups and downs in the legal business, uh, what I discovered was that in order to be successful long term, you have to be able to weather whatever the storm is, because there always is one. It's interest rates today, it'll be Middle East politics tomorrow, but there's always something, and you need a plan, and you need to understand that others have dealt with what you're dealing with, no matter
mm,
how ghastly it is. And I got to tell you, when you don't have any money coming in, and you're $1 million into the line of credit with no money coming in, and you've got people to feed, and you love them dearly, but you can't afford them anymore, so you've got to lay them off. Um, that's tough, and you
mm,
have to be mentally prepared for what are you going to do. And I think that's an important skill to learn, and it is something you can learn as a skill. So I particularly like to talk with people about that,
mhm,
because I think that we do not talk about that enough in business. We talk about career planning, and we talk about success and funnels, and how are we going to manage all the money that's coming in, and that'd be lovely, and there are days when that's exactly how it works, but people need to be prepared for what do you do when it's a rainy day.
mm,
And part of that is mental, part of it is structural, but you need to think about that. And I actually enjoy talking with people about that. I like to talk to students about what do they think about for their future. Have they even thought about their future? And what are some of the practical steps that they can apply in order to get where they need to go? The kids that I talked to this morning, I was stressing to them the importance of getting a high school education. Let's set aside college for a while, but you need the admission ticket. That's what I call it. You need that piece of paper. It's
right,
your admission ticket to whatever it is that you want to do. And I think it's important to talk to kids about that, because I don't think that our system focuses on that as much as it should. We tell them
mm,
they have to do it, but nobody explains to them why. Why is it important? Yeah. I've told you you got to do it. Okay, that's great. But, could somebody tell me why? And so I think talking about why for those things is important.
yeah, yeah. When did you first realize that you wanted to be a lawyer?
When I
When
was a
what
senior, yeah, that one's easy too. I was a senior in high school, and I was planning to be a secretary. We got a new high school principal, and he was what I call an old, used up lawyer. He had gone to law school, practiced law for a while, really didn't like it. But he liked children. So he had gone back to school and gotten a PhD in education. And he liked to teach at small rural schools. And they
mm,
didn't get much smaller or more rural than mine. There were 35 graduating seniors in my class. Um,
35. Wow.
35, yeah. And there were about 200 kids in the school, first grade through high school. So it was,
Do you have any reunions?
we do. And
Yeah.
I still see a lot of those people. I went to school with them from first grade onward, and my
Okay.
parents went to school with their parents. I mean, rural life is more continuous. You still see those people. But the principal called all of the students, the high school students, in during the
Hmm.
summer. He was new. He was a lawyer, so he'd gone through all the files, and there weren't really that many of them. And
Hmm.
he arranged to meet with all the students during the summer. So I get a call from the school secretary that I need to come. I am to be at the principal's office at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. Never
You
been in the
got
principal's
summoned.
office in my life. So, it's summer, and I've got to go and meet with the principal. And he said he had gone through my file and he said, I've looked at your file and this and that. And he said, what are you planning to do? And I said, well, I know exactly what I'm planning to do. I'm going to be a secretary. My favorite aunt was a secretary. And he looked at me and he said, you will have a secretary. You're not going to be a secretary. I am teaching a law class the last hour of the day, and you are signed up for it. So you will be taking it. I was like, okay. I didn't know anything about law. And he said, don't you want to go to law school? I was like, no, I want to be secretary. But at the end of the first semester, he came to me and he said, okay, here's the deal. Your scores are good enough. Your tests are good enough. You could do well in law school. Why don't you plan to go to law school? And then he helped me apply for an academic scholarship at the local college. So I was off and running. And he said, be an English major. You'll learn to write. And that was that.
Wow. What a blessing to have someone like that
Oh, he
in your
was
life.
terrific. Yeah. I've always said he saved someone from a really cranky, difficult secretary. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. Oh man. But I tell you what, when I was in my early career, there still were secretaries, and they definitely earned their salt for
Oh, they
sure.
did. And good secretaries ran places.
Yeah, they were like the chief in the Navy. They were like boom, 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 whatever the secretary of the CEO wanted, she got, and it was always a she.
Oh, it's always a she. Yeah.
So there you go. I wanted to step back aside again and talk about your book briefly again. Who is in your view, the main, who should read your book?
Well, for the Power at the Table book, I would
Yeah.
say, yeah. It is titled for women lawyers and is really good for any lawyer. I tell people it's not really gender or profession specific. My 90-year-old electrician tenant who lives up the hill from me read it
Mhm.
and said that he wished he had had it when he was 18. But
Mm.
but it's really designed for people who are new to their career and are thinking about what are they going to do to develop business and how do you go about doing that, because you need a system. You've got to have some sort of an expertise. You've got to have something to sell before you can sell. You've got to have something that is a skill you can use to in the law to take care of a
Mhm.
client. And you need to understand that, and you need to know exactly what area it is that you want to go into. There are people who love being tax lawyers. Doesn't make any sense to me, but there are people who really like to do that.
Yeah,
But
my
you
grandpa was
want,
like that. He was a CPA, and he was like, you know, it
yeah,
he was actually pretty gregarious, but very quiet.
but coming out of law school, all you know is that you're thrilled that you're finished with law school and you're now getting a paycheck, and you need to figure out what area is your specialty and what would you like to be doing. What would you like your perfect client to be?
Mm.
Uh, the book includes worksheets, and I split it up. I described it as a 12-step program for developing business because there are 12 chapters,
Okay.
and each one is designed around a concept or another, and
Okay.
how to move you from the idea that I'd really like to do this business development thing, but I don't know where to start. I tried
Mm.
to write the book I wish I'd had when I was starting to do business development, but it requires some introspection and you have to be honest with yourself. There are things I'm not good at. I am not good at being a transactional lawyer, and I'd be terrible at being a tax lawyer. My brain doesn't think that way.
Mhm.
But people need to figure that out. And that's true whether you're a lawyer or you're a plumber or you're a salesman. You need to figure out what it is that you're good at and how you would go about identifying a normal and appropriate market for those skills. And that doesn't come automatically. You need to give some thought to it. So this is designed for people in that position. It works well for entry-level lawyers. It works well for young partners because at a lot of law firms, you're not really required to do business development until you're a partner. And suddenly you're a part owner and you're expected to not just feed yourself, but feed others. And if you've never done that before, that's a stark realization. What do you do? I'm supposed to support 4 associates and give them all their work and make sure that the clients get their bills paid. What do I do? So this is designed, it can be used very effectively, I think, for young partners who just transitioned to that part
Mm,
of not
okay.
just being worker bees, but being owners.
Very good. I've been waiting for this. I'd love to talk to you about your children's books.
Yeah, the children's books are fun.
So I'm going to switch to your website. Welcome to Frogville.
Yes. This is the fictional Frogville as opposed to the real Frogville.
Yeah,
But
and your
yeah,
ranch is called Frog Sigh.
Versailles. Yes, I was at Versailles uh, on a birthday trip right after I turned 40, and I was in the
Mm.
little wagon with the horse-drawn wagon. They were dragging us around, and I thought, you know, my property's about this size. It doesn't have a name. Frog size sounds really good. It's close to Frogville. So yes, so that's the source of the name for Frog Sigh. But it has grown to 800 acres and we have about 200 head of cattle. And it's
Beautiful.
wonderful. It's a great break from real life.
From real life.
Yeah.
I imagine there's a bit of effort involved.
There it does not come automatically. That is true.
Yeah, Black Angus. I remember um, I spent a summer. I got to spend a summer on a ranch in Idaho when I was in 7th grade, between 7th and 8th grade,
Yeah.
and they were raising Black Angus for 4-H as show animals, or
Oh yeah.
for they were going to sell them. So that was fun. I got to meet several Black Angus,
Yeah,
and
you get them up close and personal. They're not really pets. I tell
no,
people they're like vegetables on the hoof.
not
They can be foul-tempered and they can be mean, but they're also bucolic and restful. Yeah,
yes, yeah. There's a peacefulness about them,
yeah,
and your land is absolutely beautiful. And there's your moniker, the
yeah.
frog sigh.
Yes, my friend Tatiana from Los Angeles designed that for me.
Mm.
Wasn't that a wonderful gift?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
so like fanciful. Yeah,
yeah. She designed my own flag for me.
very good. So I wanted to go back to your children's books. So you have 3.
I have 3. I will have a 4th one coming out in March. Should be ready to publish on International Frog Day, the 20th of March. Uh,
All
the
right.
the stories revolve around Lily and her twin brother Crocus. And in Frogville, when a boy turns 13, he turns into a frog because the town was cursed by a wandering wizard, and the townsfolk were not nice to him. But when
Mm.
Lily and Crocus are twins, so when they turn 13, instead of Crocus, the boy, turning into a frog, Lily turns into a frog. And she has to go on a quest to get a royal kiss to release her from the curse. And these stories are about her travels and her attempts to get back home to Frogville. And they have a female protagonist. Most traditional fairy tales have either a female victim or sometimes a female wicked person, but
Mhm.
not usually the hero. So she's really the hero. But these are stories about siblings, and there's stories about familial relationships and keeping one's promise and friendship. Uh, They've been fun. I've really enjoyed the process. And the fourth one is kind of an amalgam of Norse mythology and The Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz is out of copyright, so I could do that now.
Ah,
But
okay.
that one will be out in March, and Ken Walls and I have been working on illustrations for that. We're using AI to do illustrations. So that's been fun and a good proof that at my age I can still learn something new. At least that's the way I view it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, we've got a couple people there. Bob Donnell has been watching, I think. You know Bob, Bob Donnell, right?
I'm not sure that I
Oh,
do.
you need to meet Bob. He is a
Clearly I do.
fascinating man, and he's been watching us, um, and he's making comments. Great story about the principal, he says.
Yeah, he was a terrific guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Bob is an amazing human. He's a person who's an expert at human behavior,
Oh,
and
cool.
he's a tremendous resource
Yeah.
and a really good guy. So it's fun to have him here with us. Let's see, where can we go? We've covered about everything. You've got the books. You're speaking. Do you want to talk about your expert witness?
Yeah, we could do that. That's been fun. You know, as a trial lawyer, I spent all of my time asking people questions. So I would have experts on the stand, and I would quiz them and drill them on all sorts of things. Uh, right after I retired, I got a call from a lawyer that I had known for a long time, and he needed an expert to talk about the history of a specific type of litigation. And it was
Mm,
something that I knew a lot about. I had done a lot of asbestos litigation. So I can bore you to tears with the medical literature and the industrial hygiene literature and the geology literature and how the cases developed, because
mm,
all of that sets the stage for what is really the longest ongoing type of civil litigation in US history. And they needed someone who could talk about that. And I probably have as much expertise in that area as anybody in the country. I have a friend, Al Parnell, and another friend, John Fitzpatrick, who probably know slightly more than I do, mainly because Al's older than us. So he's been around longer, but he's also a tremendous font of information. And Fitz tries probably more cases than any human I've ever run into. So they know a tremendous amount about that. But I am in the enviable position of having a really unique expertise on that. So I've done some work in that space, and it's been fun. It's kind of interesting to be on the other side and
mm,
have people
yeah,
asking me questions, because I used
yeah.
to train witnesses on how do you respond and how do you answer. And it's sometimes difficult to remember that for myself. It's like, ooh, I answered that. I need to stop talking.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. And so what who would want to contact you and for what?
Well, anyone who wants to train people on how to do business development could contact me. Anyone
Okay.
who wants to hear about business resilience and planning, and that's a training issue too. That's for both businesses and law firms specifically. I do motivational speaking, so I trust me. I tell people I swam the Red River once. I didn't plan to swim it again. Having come from rural America and rural education, but having succeeded, as you noted earlier, uh, with in the big leagues,
Mm,
I can talk to people about there are ways for them to do that. You should not assume just because you didn't grow up in the big city and you didn't go to school at Harvard or one of the big places, you can still succeed. And there are some just practical steps for people that I like to talk about. So I I'm kind of a polyglot in ways. I speak a lot of languages, um,
Mm.
business, motivation, litigation, all of those sorts of things.
But each one of those by themselves is a challenge to uh, speak to at a high level, and you're speaking to all of those at a very high level. So it's quite an achievement.
Well, I appreciate that. For me, that's just what I do. That's all. That's been me from the get-go.
Okay. Well, you followed your heart and found your purpose. And I must say that that environment with the expert witness, that environment, to some, I think the first time I walked into a courtroom like that, I was just in awe.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, there's just so much going on there with, there's a story in that room, and it's somewhat intimidating to some, but that's your playground right there.
That's just what I've done. So, you know, truthfully, I've been in a courthouse in one role or another since I was 12 years old. Because when I was working for the abstract company between seventh and eighth grade, it was at the courthouse. So I
Mm,
have literally been in a courthouse one way or another for 50 years.
wow.
It's my
Yeah,
natural habitat.
it's your natural habitat. Well, it's I'm glad it's you that's there, because there's a lot of people who could take advantage of that, and you seem like a really honest and ethical person and knowledgeable. So it's nice to know. Um, let's see. I have one more question.
Okay.
You have time?
I do.
Okay. I asked this of everybody on the show, and it's this: taking a look at your whole life, what was the boldest leadership decision that you've made, and what were the consequences?
Probably the boldest was the decision to go into business with my friend, because I was 33 years old. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any clients, uh, but I had an 80-year-old lawyer friend of my dad's that I sat down and talked with, and I
Mhm.
told him that I had been asked to do this, and I didn't know if it would work or not, and I didn't know if it made sense from the money standpoint. And he gave me some great advice. He said, "Look, you're young. If it works, it'll be fabulous. If it doesn't work, you'll find another job. Just not that big a deal." And I had not really thought about it in that way,
Mm,
but I'd really just closed my eyes and jumped because I didn't have a background in business. I had thought that I was just going to work at a firm for my career because that's kind of what we were trained to do.
mhm,
And I was trusting that this person that I really liked and worked with was going to be a good and quality partner. And as it turned, he was. I mean, we had we couldn't have been more different, and we couldn't have reached decisions more differently, but we invariably reached the same decision. And that was a leap of faith. So I think that was the boldest decision that I ever made. And by doing that, I had to be a leader because I described him as my rock star. He was in the courtroom all the time, and I was meeting people, I was training people, I was meeting clients. I had to step into a leadership role with skills that I didn't naturally have. So
mm.
I think that was it.
Okay. And long term, looking back on that decision that you made early on, that was a pivotal thing that you did, a decision. How do you think that affected your life, and was it worth it? I think I know the answer, but
Oh, it made all the difference in the world. I was running my life, not living somebody else's life at that point. I was in charge for good or bad. It was on me. It was my decision, and it was my success. It wasn't
Mm.
somebody else's success. So it was absolutely the right decision to make. And if I had it to do all over again, I would do it in a heartbeat. There are some things I would do differently during the course of the this this whole profession and so on. But that decision would not be one that I would do differently.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And thank you for spending time with me on the Bold Leadership Story Show today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I've really enjoyed it.
Me as well. So we're going to end here and hang on a sec.